So to discuss, we're joined by constitutional law expert Rebecca Sibanda and a public law professor and political commentator Richard Calland. Thank you both for being with us tonight. Let me start with you, Ms. Sibanda, and the same question as our opener to both of you. Do you agree with Casac that this process was fundamentally flawed?
Thank you for having me. I'm inclined to agree with Casac simply because, I watched the interviews and I am of the opinion that not all the judges that were interviewed during that process were treated fairly and equally. So some of them did experience significantly more what it looks like unfair questioning, lines of questioning that addressed issues that didn't necessarily address their fitness nor their properness to be, members of the Constitutional Court bench. So I think that whilst I believe that we are poorer for not having the court, go through the papers and hear the court's judgment on, these matters and, hearing how the court would have perhaps instructed or directed the JSC to behave in terms of its criteria for question asking, etc. I think that this is, for now, a suitable way forward to allow the interviews to take place afresh, and hopefully that the members on the JSC panel conduct themselves in a way that is, it meets their mandate constitutionally, and also in terms of the act, that they treat the candidates fairly and impartially and equally.
Professor, do you agree?
I do. I think that Mr. Banda makes a very good point about the legitimacy of the court, and that's a really important thing in any democracy, but especially a constitutional democracy where judges have the authority and the power to overturn the choices made by what some people call the political branches, the legislature and the executive. So it's very important that the public can trust not just the judges, but how they were appointed. And if there are flaws in the appointment process, as there clearly were in this case, then it's absolutely right that there should be some delay in order to correct the process. And that's exactly what has happened. So my hat's off not just to Casac. I serve on their advisory council. I should just mention that. I'm extremely proud of that association because this is a spectacular outcome. The challenge was well taken and well made in defense of a very important principle, the legitimacy of the bench. But I also commend the JSC for folding and not fighting, if I can put it like that, because in an era of lawfare where everybody seems to want to fight every single point, every single appeal, it's excellent that they have recognized the weakness of their case, the flaws in the process, and now they must repeat it.
Casac, that you are affiliated to, was concerned about some of the questions from the likes of EFF leader Julius Malema. Do you agree those were political? And hasn't this happened before? If you get MPs involved, that there will be a political tinge?
Well, there should be a political tinge in the sense that the design of the JSC is very, in my view, skillful. And I think there's nothing wrong with the design. It seeks to have a balance between experts in law, representatives of legal profession and judges, but also having representatives of the people, elected representatives, in order to ensure that there is a democratic voice in the process, that it's not captured by elite interests in the legal profession. And that's a delicate balance. And any institution is only as good, regardless of how well it's been crafted and designed, is only as good as the people who occupy the seats on that particular body. 23 commissioners sit, and in my view, on the hearings that were challenged, there was reprehensible conduct by both the chair of the JSC, the Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng, and Mr. Malema. The two of them essentially ganged up on a couple of, at least one, if not two, of the interviewees and gave them a torrid time with no justification. Mr. Malema in particular was playing politics not in the sense of representing the public view, but trying to deal with personal points regarding litigation that the EFF had brought, and he was unhappy with a particular judge, Daya Pillay, and he was trying to simply undermine her. Unfortunately, the Chief Justice did not protect that candidate, and nor did he protect the process.
Well, Mr. Banda, he didn't not only not protect her, but he raised an issue around her friendship with Minister Pravin Gordhan and said that Gordhan had once asked about how she had done in previous interviews for the Supreme Court. So he raised something am I correct in saying this, that didn't actually concern her? She didn't inquire about her own performance. The minister did. He's admitted to that. So there's a problem there, but seemingly it was being used against the judge. Is that a fair assessment?
That is an accurate assessment of what happened. And I think that now, looking back, I think it's important for us to remember, like I said, that has nothing to do with her qualifications, her experience, and her understanding of the law. It had nothing to do with the mandate of the JSC in interrogating her fitness or properness to sit on that bench. So bringing political affiliation or relationships outside of that environment to the fore served no purpose other than to score political points. And I think that now that we've seen the list of the interviewees for the next round in October, her name is missing very conspicuously. And I think it's unfortunate that a qualified and experienced member of our judiciary has perhaps missed out on a very important opportunity by removing herself. But I think that the appearance of bias, or whether or not it's real or evident, has caused enough damage. So her removal, I think, was wise and cautious. But also it's that even if she was not wrong, the appearance has been cost that she might have been wrong, that her association with the former minister was, in some way a problem and would maybe influence her decisions once she made it to the bench.
Professor, how serious is this? How sinister do you think it all is around this particular Judge Pillay? I remember being quite alarmed when the former president, Jacob Zuma, mentioned her name at Nkandla. So you have people who are very passionate about his legal rights, and he's mentioning a female judge who found against him or said he was in contempt of court. Then again, some of these things are brought up at the JSC. This is a female judge. On the other hand, it's often been said, why not name the judges if you make accusations against them? For example, in relation to the former president, why not name them? But then he does, and we think, sure, it's all very unfair.
Well, not only is, I think, there personal bad blood between some of the commissioners and some of the candidates, in particular the one we're discussing here, Judge Pillay, but it strays into the very unfortunate and dangerous territory of both misogyny and also potentially racism in terms of anti-Indian South African feelings at a time when tensions in the country are obviously very delicate in those regards. And so a double misfortune happens here to the process in terms of its legitimacy and the process of appointment, but also in terms of these broader social issues. And it's incumbent upon the commissioners who represent different parts of society and the public to be very, careful in how they deploy their authority. What I hope now, being an optimist, is that the challenge will refresh the process, and the JSC will now press restart, or reset, I should say, and it will now be much more conscientious and focused on asking the sorts of questions that Ms. Sibanda rightly says should be asked about fitness for office, judicial outlook, track record and performance, and commitment to the Constitution and transformation, those sorts of questions, and not to allow personal bad blood to get in the way of that inquiry.
Well, Professor, now is it the same people that are going to pose the questions, or are you hoping that they are more careful? And what about the judges who felt they performed well and it was all fine the last time?
Well, there'll be a big difference in October at next hearings because the Chief Justice will either have retired or about to retire from the bench. So the acting Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, Justice Zondo, will be, I presume, in the chair. Mr. Malema will presumably still be there. And everyone will be watching very carefully to see that the JSC stays in its lane, respects its constitutional authority and mandate, and doesn't behave and conduct itself, at least some parts of the JSC, in the way that it did and which brought it into disrepute. Yeah. And it's very, very important that they do that, because otherwise people are simply not going to apply for judicial appointment if they think they're going to be treated in that kind of reprehensible way by the JSC. They simply won't want to put themselves through it. And we had that experience 3 or 4 years ago where people didn't want to apply because they didn't want to put themselves through that torrid time at the JSC. Things calmed down, and unfortunately there's this setback with the April hearings. I say it's a setback. I hope now the JSC will reset thanks to this legal challenge, and the path ahead will be a better one.
Yeah. Ms. Sibanda, let's end with you. Are you also optimistic?
I think I might be a bit optimistic, but I think until we see, on paper, a review, a concerted effort to guide the panelists or the commissioners in their questioning, the creation of a criteria of evaluation for the candidates, then it's very possible that we will end up with a situation like this again. If there's no guidelines for the commissioners, then candidates are putting themselves in the line of fire, and we don't know what questions are going to be asked. There needs to be a standardized manner of questioning and, equal treatment of all the candidates that appear before the JSC.
All right, and of course we'll follow that fresh set of interviews, the process starting again. That was constitutional law expert Rebecca Sibanda and law professor and political commentator Richard Calland.